The only way is the right way, I might say. Nobody doing it better, y'all some lightweights. Malik Wright, up all day and all night, pushing all the buttons up to something till it's alright. He looking at it from all sides and angles, got a stripes on his body like he played for the Bengals. Oh man, there's no one discussing it. They came, they stayed, they either did it or done it. Man, I love it, cause all they ever do is win. So kick that, relax, the TWSN.
Shout out Young Swish.
Thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of State of the Jungle with Malik Wright, presented by the Right Way Sports Network. I'm your host, Malik Wright. Joined by my co-host, as always, we've got Logan, we've got Daniel. No Evan today, but that's all right. Jam-packed show, a lot of stuff to get into, a lot of stuff to talk about. But before we do, make sure you guys give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, turn on post notifications so you guys never miss when we go live or when we upload content from the TWSN studios. Boys, a lot of silence, I would say, on the defensive coordinator spot. I spoke with two coaches today from the Bengals, and I'll tell you right now, it seems like, I don't want to say they have their eye on someone, but it definitely, reading the tea leaves and the brief conversations, it certainly feels like there might be a coach that they have in mind. There was some speculation out there, Wink Martindale. One thing I could tell you is I know Tom Pelissero got that from somewhere. He would not just put that out there. Do I think the interest level is significant? No. But do I think it was probably talked about at one point or another? Yes. Doesn't look like they're going to go that route. So on this show, we're going to be talking about who our ideal candidates are for the defensive coordinator spot. We're going to be talking about how we feel the Bengals should attack free agency. And we're going to answer the question, is Zac Taylor on the hot seat entering 2025? I've got some interesting updates on that too. Something I was told unequivocally that it's going that it's 100% a certain way. I'll talk about that when we get to that point. But I guess we could start off with the defensive coordinator talk. I want to get your guys' overall thoughts on who you guys think the Bengals defense coordinator should be, might be. I'll tell you this, and here's where I'll start off with saying this. I feel like, and this is my honest take, I think there are a lot of people out there who want a name. Mm-hmm. I think people don't really care necessarily about what the stats have shown, what the data has shown. I think people want the person with the biggest name, and I think that's the reason why you obviously had the clamor for a guy like Robert Saleh, albeit Robert Saleh has been a guy that if anyone is deserving of consideration for a defense coordinator job, it's definitely him, considering the job he has done. But what I hate that's happening, and excuse me while I rant for a second, I hate that it's becoming a popularity contest. I hate that people are like, well, if it's an old guy, we don't want him. We want a young, innovative coach. We want somebody that's going to be potentially a head coaching candidate in a year and be out the door. To be honest with you, I have a different opinion. You have a head coach currently who is offensive minded. You have your quarterback in place. This isn't like the Andy Dalton era, right? Where who the offensive coordinator mattered so much because you thought that if we didn't have a great offensive coordinator, Andy Dalton would regress. This is a situation for me where it feels like the side of the ball that needs the most work is obviously the defense from a construction standpoint, roster construction standpoint.
Absolutely.
And for me, I'm less concerned about the offense side of the ball, obviously, right? Because of who we have at quarterback and who the head coach is and all that good stuff. Mm-hmm. I'm more concerned about who the defense side of the ball, because you ideally want somebody in that spot that would be there for a while. You ideally want, I hate to say it, Cincinnati should be of the mentality that they want their own Steve Spagnuolo.
Yeah.
That's, if I'm being honest, that would do this defense wonders.
It's a great comparison.
It's crazy to me how many people are scoffing at the idea of adding an older defensive-minded coach that has proven that they can coordinate a defense in the National Football League. It wasn't too long ago when every defensive-minded coach was turning away from the idea of being a coordinator for the Cincinnati Bengals. I think we're quick to forget, personally. That all being said, I will not scoff at the idea of adding, quite possibly, the best defensive coordinator in Bengals history in Mike Zimmer through the span in which he was here. Does that mean that they're going to go with him? Absolutely not. But I'm bringing us down to reality here. Does a Matt Eberflus make sense? Yes. Does a Robert Saleh make sense? Yes. Does all these guys that we're talking about make sense? Yes. But to me, this time around, I'm more attracted to a defensive coordinator that, one, has shown I can coordinate a defense. I'm not looking for my next head coaching opportunity right away to jet out the door. You want somebody that can build this thing and build an identity with this defense. So the notion that, no, we've got to hire the next hot, young, defensive-minded guy, you'll be back to square one. That's the way I see it. And I think what you're seeing right now is you're seeing a lot of these offensive-minded, you think about what Sean McVay did. Sean McVay became the head coach of the Rams. What's one of the first hires he made was Wade Phillips as defensive coordinator.
Need the support. It's another great comparison. Yeah.
It's okay. These guys don't forget how to coach. These guys have badges. These guys have respectability to their name. It's not a bad thing to hire an older guy to be the defensive coordinator. Maybe it is for offensive mind, but the Ravens don't think so. They hire Todd Monken, and that's working out pretty damn good for them.
Very good.
The thought process, though, that no, we can't go old. We want new. Okay. And that's not saying you go after every old name in the book. That's not what I'm saying. But stop being so turned off to the idea of adding an elder statesman at the defensive coordinator spot. Defense, like NFL, like football, like offense changes, right? It's ever changing. It's an offensive driven league. Defense don't change that much. Got your coordinator with typical schemes 4-3, 3-4, right? Things don't change too much, though. You might send exotic blitzes and stuff like that. Defense isn't sexy. It's not meant to be sexy. Every now and again, you'll come across a coordinator like a Brian Flores that do exotic blitzes like 2-4 double mug. Corral the line of scrimmage, right? Every now and again, you'll get a defensive coordinator that sort of revolutionizes the position. We've never seen something like that before. But to me, let's not be so turned off to the idea of adding a veteran defensive coordinator. To me, it could be exactly what this staff needs. And I say staff because it's clear, right? At points, it feels like Zac is in over his head when it comes to clock management. What Zac needs, hear me out when I say this, Zac needs someone that he can look at and say, that's your baby. That's your side of the ball. You're the head coach of the defense. I don't want anything to do with it. I want to focus on offense and clock management. That's what he needs someone. He needs someone that can coordinate the defense and be the head coach of the defense. Who better to do that than people who have been former head coaches or people who have been longtime respected defensive coordinators in the National Football League? That's my thought process. Daniel, what say you?
Yeah. Our last show, I believe it was, we discussed these potential coordinators. And I was really, open to every idea. And I think that that's what the fan base should be. And I think that's one of the fun things, about even Twitter recently. You log on and just see different conversations because we're all learning, right? For me, entering this new coordinator, it was one of two thought processes, right? It was get yourself somebody who's connected to Zac Taylor. And this was my thought process, right? Hey, somebody that Zach's coached with before, somebody that Zach's talked with before, somebody that, he's got that connection with, because that would make sense, right? They bring in that name. Oh, he coached with them in Miami. Oh, he coached with them in LA. So that's where the names for me was like the Aubrey Pleasant, right? The young, sexy name, the guy who's, the assistant head coach with the Rams right now. I think he's still an interesting candidate. But my mind's kind of shifted towards, the other side. And this is for me, right? I think it is valuable that, and you brought up the names like the Wade Phillips, like the Steve Spagnuolas. I think there's serious value in bringing in somebody who's just done it before, right? Who's had success, because that's where I believe that this team is. I believe that this team is on a trajectory to, and should have the urgency to say, hey, this upcoming season and the next 2 seasons, this is our window to win a damn Super Bowl. So when I'm kind of looking at the names now, the names obviously like the Mike Zimmers are interesting. The Wink Martindale was an interesting one. I went back and, kind of saw how, his defenses have done, whether it was with the Giants or with Michigan. Something I loved about him was the fact that he had dominant defensive linemen. He really made that an emphasis. Hey, our interior, we are going to get pressure from the middle. And obviously we're going to send blitzes. We're going to, crowd the line of scrimmage, but we are going to send pressure from the middle. And that's something I personally think is valuable. I think the Bengals should be looking at. But the one name I'll say, and the name I'm kind of stuck on right now, is a name I'm pretty confident this guy's going to get a job. It's Steve Wilks. We talked about him on the show, last time. And he's, the guy where he's got an interview with the Falcons. So it shows, number one, people are still looking at him, right? He's got an interview. And I went back, and kind of did, what was his past like? He was the defense coordinator with the Browns, and he was only there for 1 year. So ask yourself, why was that? It was the year Freddie Kitchens was there, right? So Freddie Kitchens, that entire team imploded. And if you say, well, he had a part in it too. Who was their offense coordinator? It was Todd Monken. So Todd Monken, where is he now, right? He's his career is taken off. So why are we going to knock Steve Wilks for that? You take it out over another year, right? Or the year before, Arizona Cardinals, Josh Rosen. And that whole team was discombobulated. So I don't really rate that too negatively. You also look at one more time, the Carolina Panthers, right? Took over after Matt Rule. And they really went out there and they turned their season around. Yeah. And everybody was up in arms, right? Steve Wilks, why was he not hired as the head coach? That was a serious conversation. People believe that he got scapegoated. And then my real reasoning is you look at what he did with the 49ers. And I think it is kind of a similar situation to the Cincinnati Bengals in Lou Anarumo. He was there for 1 year and they made the Super Bowl. After the Super Bowl, he was fired. And there were comments from Nick Bosa saying, oh, I felt like we weren't prepared for Patrick Mahomes' quarterback keeps. I look at the outcry for Steve Wilks. I truly believe he got scapegoated there. And maybe it just didn't work out. But you look at guys like Julius Peppers, guys like Trey Boston, people came out in support of Steve Wilks and saying, hey, the first 9 possessions of the Super Bowl, you gave up, I believe, 3 to 6 points or maybe 1 touchdown. Mm-hmm. So out of 2 possessions, you allowed a score. Or 2 out of 9 possessions, you allowed a score. I don't believe that Super Bowl loss was fully on the defense. And I believe a lot of it was on the offense. You had a lead. You blew a 2-score lead. So yes, he, requires some blame and should share some blame. But I think that he's a valuable name for me. I look at it and say, hey, if this guy's getting interviewed by the Atlanta Falcons, it shows teams are still interested in him. And I think that when I look at his history, I think that he's got a lot of bad rap. And he's a guy where I can look and say, hey, as much as they need to add talent, he's a name I could look and say, hey, I'm confident in him, what he can do. So he's one of the names I looked at and say, hey, because respectfully, whoever they hire, you're still going to need the front office to do their part. And that's why I believe the front office shares a lot of this blame. But I say all that to say Steve Wilks is one of the names where I'm confident he'll end up getting a job, and I would not be mad at all if he was the Bengals' new defense coordinator.
Yeah, I'm glad you ended it with the whole front office, just how they play a big factor into no matter who's going to be the defensive coordinator. We all know that, the defense, like Malik alluded to, is just in much desperate need of just new faces. I don't even want to say talent. There's some talent out there, but they need some new bodies. They need some more talent. They need some more different skill sets than what they currently have. But we don't know how they're going to operate. That's one thing we will never know until they decide to make the moves that they make. So, I'm going to pound the table for the same guy I did last week. I really, really love Patrick Graham. And again, I think everybody does for the most part. I don't think there's been anybody out there that's really like,
I don't.
Why?
It's basic. His
Okay.
defenses are I mean, he did well, obviously, with with some of the talent that he had with the Raiders, but his defenses weren't overall overly impressive. They did well against Patrick Mahomes. To me, I don't feel like Patrick Graham is a step up from Luan Arumo.
Well,
Respectfully.
I don't. Is there really going to be that many people out there that are guaranteed step ups over
No, that's
Lou?
why it was a stupid decision.
Yeah, and I agree with
right.
that. But that's why, I think Patrick Graham just possesses kind of like that middle ground of what you're looking for. I think that, he's probably not like a head coach anytime relatively super soon, even though there is some interest there. He still is, his defense is good enough. Like you said, with Patrick Mahomes, he's done well there. But this year, just with the Raiders, he had 18 different players record a sack. 18. That is a lot of different people. And outside of Max Crosby, most people watching this probably couldn't even name people on the Raiders defensive line. Zach Carter was playing defense for Patrick Graham and recording sacks for Patrick Graham. He couldn't do any of that here necessarily either. Adam Butler, second on their team in sacks. Caleb Chason, tied for second in their team with sacks with 5 each outside of Max Crosby. Those aren't big names. That is truly getting a lot out of what you are handed to. Adam Butler hasn't been anything his whole career. This year, and he's going to be a guy I'm going to talk about in free agency too, produced in the run game, in the pass game. Caleb Chason has been terrible everywhere he's went since he came out of the draft from LSU. He comes on this year, took over a game against the Chiefs, absolutely dominated against the Kansas City Chiefs, which is a wild statement within its own. Jack Jones is one of the best ball hawks in the league right now. Pass deflections, almost 20 this year, several interceptions. I can just admire when somebody is putting together relatively good overall defensive stats with talent that is bare minimum. And he lost Max Crosby, and the production didn't really drop off all that. I'm not saying anything about Max Crosby or how not important he is to the Raiders, because he is a phenomenal player. But it's encouraging to see when you take a look at the roster that he was dealt with this year in Las Vegas and how much production he got out of players that have been cut once, twice, several times, that have bursted onto the scene, multiple sacks, multiple interceptions. Robert Spillane had 160 tackles. Like, Trayvon Mulray has been great, 100 tackles in the safety room. They're producing. He has so many people that are producing that necessarily shouldn't be producing or haven't been producing. And I think that is such a great sign for the Bengals, because they need to just get production. It shouldn't matter who the hell is out there if they're getting production. Yeah. And that's what the Bengals are lacking. They have talent. They have some names. They have, the upside, this and that, but they're not getting the production out of them. So when I see a guy like Patrick Graham getting, I don't want to say elite production, but elite production, when you look at the people who are producing it, it seems a whole lot better. And that's just why I have really been pushing for Patrick Graham, and I will probably continue to do so until he is hired somewhere else or hired here.
I got to think that if the Bengals were seriously entertaining Patrick Graham, this deal would have been wrapped up already.
I know.
I respect Patrick Graham, honestly. The job he did with New York was impressive. Mm-hmm. I still believe that the Bengals have a player issue to a degree.
Yeah.
Right. Where they need better talent on the defense side of the ball. In terms of the Aubrey Graham thing, Daniel, I actually called about that today. Right. Yeah. So I was wondering why Aubrey Graham, if you look around the league, he's not getting Aubrey.
How about Dre? Dre.
I can't believe I just said that. Wow. I called it Aubrey Pleasant, and I was wondering the same thing, why he wasn't getting a lot of love around the league. And the one thing I said was a lot of people were rubbed the wrong way from his stint with the Detroit Lions. Remember, he left the Rams, and he had that big issue with Jeff Okudah on the sideline. And then he went back to Sean McVay and the Rams. So a lot of people are viewing him as, it's one of those wait and see type of approaches, like you got your eye on, right? Yeah. But you went away you didn't have success. Your group sucked, right? And that's the true measure of a defensive. You had an elite defensive back room with the Rams. And they say elite on paper, I'll say name wise, and the names were there. But overall, your success did not translate to that with Detroit. So I think when you look at it, that's a guy that's going to have uphill climb a little bit to get serious defensive coordinator opportunities, because I think a lot of people feel like he's a merchant of Sean McVay. And I'll be honest with you, it feels like obviously he's going through right now a patch in which he's going through a patch right now in which he's trying to like reestablish himself. Yes. Right. Like he's a good leader. He's a good communicator, the whole 9 yards. Cause I don't know if you remember how many players were excited when he was gone. He got let go. That people were tweeting and stuff like that. Yeah. And it's like, I get why he's kind of got to go through a little bit repairing. Did you see when he um did you see when he got a chance to be the head coach for the Rams this past preseason?
Yeah.
Did you ever see the video clip that came out about that? It just
No.
felt very forced.
Oh.
It felt very forced. Like, I love you, man. I love you. Saying I love you to every single coach on the sideline. Like, you could tell so many people are looking at him like, dude, this is not how you actually are. You're mic'd up right now, right? It's like, I don't know. I think that
weird.
Yeah. And I want to add to that real quick. I think that, and this isn't to bag on the guy. There's two things. One thing is, I truly believe, and this is just my philosophy when it comes, I believe Sean McVay is the best coach in the NFL. And I think that obviously you could have a coaching tree that can come from that. But there's just some things, whether it's even also credit to their GM. I believe that Les Snead and Sean McVay should have so much of, should reap so much of the praise because those two guys really are the heads of the ship. And you just go simply take a look. We'll talk about this when we get to free agency, but their draft class and their vision for players are so aligned to where they bring somebody in. You could look at pretty much every player that they bring in, they at least have a 50% hit rate. We're talking Jared Verse. We're talking, so many different guys. Puka Nacua was a 5th round draft pick. These guys should have so much of the praise. And a guy like Aubrey Pleasant, to finish off with him, they had an offense coordinator position open, I believe, this year, or a defense coordinator position. He wasn't given the role. It was given to somebody else who was a first-year guy. So that's another, if we're talking about the Bengals DC, he was given a chance, to interview for the Rams DC, and he didn't get it. So that's just, I really respect Sean McVay's, analysis of it. So it's like, hey, if he went in a different direction, maybe it's not the time for Aubrey, especially for a team that's looking to win a Super Bowl now, like Cincinnati Bengals.
Yeah. An update, what I heard, I was talking to some people around the league. You know what I heard? I heard that Lou Anarumo is being in consideration, obviously, for the Colts job. I think he met with them today. It was like a 2-day meeting. It was dinner, and then it was that, and then the Falcons, obviously. But Ben Johnson apparently is looking at Lou Anarumo to be his defense coordinator, potentially if he gets a head coaching gig. And so is Kellen Moore, from what I was told. So Kellen Moore, Ben Johnson are two people that have Lou Anarumo on their eyesight for a potential defensive coordinator candidate. So it's going to be interesting to see if he lands with either of those coaches. In terms of who my defensive ideal candidate is, I don't give a fuck, to be honest with you. Just get it right. Get somebody that comes in with an identity that, is going to be able to, first and foremost, the biggest thing that's important to me is make sure that the defensive coordinator is going to be able to get talent in here and pieces in here that they want. That's the biggest thing. I don't care about a name. I'm not salivating over a Dennis Allen. I'm not salivating over all these other weird ass names. I don't care about that. I care about somebody that's going to actually produce results. You could find this dude at a high school level. I don't give a damn if they're going to produce results for the Bengals and make this franchise actually commit serious dollars to fixing this defensive line and not have a pass rusher and Trey Hendrickson fighting for his fucking life out there by himself. Right, the pass rush was such a huge stain on the Bengals this year. You're talking about guys that had a pass rush win rate outside of Trey Hendrickson, who was at a 90. The next highest guy was Joseph Ossai at a 58. Sam Hubbard, this is all via PFF, was at a 47. Miles Murphy was at a 56. It's trash numbers. And then everybody's like, well, it's the coaching. No, with the players got to play the people that are out there at points in time. And you got to try to win and beat your guy. That's what it comes down to football at the end of the day. You have to still go out there. You have to try and do your job regardless of how bad coaching is. It was almost like when Carl Lawson was telling people, oh, well, I was told I can't use my pass rushing repertoire. Come on, dude, you suck. Like, that's just what it is. So for me, when I look at, I'm just being honest. Like, these players will make excuses for their poor performance. No one told, like, these players make poor excuses for their poor performance and the reason why they start slow, or reason why they suck. And it's something, sometimes you just have to play. And if you're going to get players or coaches or anybody that makes excuses, well, you got to get replaced. It's a National Football. You got to try to find a way, regardless. You have to try to find a way to win. I don't want players that make excuses. So there's an interesting video that I have coming out tomorrow. Logan asked me before the show, could I tell him who what I was looking at? And I'll get that and get into that for my free agency talk. But ideally, I just want a coach that's gonna come here with an identity, right? Gonna be able to run the defense the way he sees fit. Gonna have the front office buy into what they're trying to do. Hell, I threw the name out there a couple weeks ago, Ron Rivera. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I threw out that name. Listen, I want somebody out there. I want a defensive minded coach that is proven, not a guy that you're taking a flyer on, a guy that's proven that shown you can have success. And guess what? This is the offseason where you have a bunch of guys that are potentially out there that you can add, to this coaching staff and make them the defensive coordinator. But at the end of the day, players got to play. Players got to play, right? Eberflus, I was very impressed with the job that he's done, right, with the Colts. And even if you look at the Bears defense, took a step back once he got fired. Eberflus was instrumental in the Colts defense success and their Colts defense resurgence. And Eberflus is probably a guy that you can hire and you don't have to worry about him getting a head coaching job for quite some time because he has to do some real hard work. And you got to realize he's older too. So when he got hired, it was like, oh, wow, Matt Eberflus got hired. That the opportunity got squandered because of poor clock management, the whole 9 yards. So you got to ask yourself now, if you hire a Matt Eberflus, does he make sense here in Cincinnati? To me, it makes a lot of sense. To me, to see him take a defense and make it a project and change and turn the entire face of the defense around, that's something Zac should work with. And I love the fact that Zac is apparently stepping out of his comfort zone and going after guys that he does not have he doesn't know. We don't have amazing relationships and not like their buddies. And he talked about before when we were doing joint practices with the Colts, there's no relationship with him and Matt Eberflus outside of that. But it's going to be a little bit of a search here. It's going to be a little bit of search to see who the defensive coordinator is, which is bringing me to my next point that I want to talk about. And I want to make sure that I'm sort of going in semi order, I'll say, because I have a tendency not to go in order. How should the Bengals attack free agency? There is a guy on the defensive line. And no, DJ, I was not stealing your Ron Rivera takes. I made that take a couple weeks back, brother. But I'm sure if we both said it, we both think alike. There's a guy on the defensive side of the ball. I'm gonna say this name, and before you crucify me, before anybody crucifies me, listen to my argument. Baron Browning. Baron Browning's who my video is on tomorrow. He has, according to PFF, he is, and Logan's excited about that.
Yeah, I like it.
Baron Browning is a guy that I feel like has so much upside. Mm-hmm. So much upside. He's a guy that didn't have a great year either. He was traded midseason, right? But you want to talk about the season he put up last year, right? 41st amongst 197 eligible edge rushers total. That's what he was ranked, guys. He was considered the 41st best defensive end in the entire National Football League. His pass rush win rate was at 74. He finished 39 of 197. His run defense was at an 80, according to PFF. 9th out of 197 defensive ends. To me, when you think about a guy like Baron Browning, who's sort of been written off, I saw the job that he did with Denver. I saw how, obviously he kind of fell out of favor there with guys like Jonathan Cooper, Nick Bonito, so on and so forth, emerging in that defense.
Yeah, those are two great.
It made sense. It made sense. It made sense why they traded him.
Yeah.
And you know what's crazy? Even him being traded midseason, remember he tore his meniscus, so he's coming off of that. Even him being traded midseason, look, his pass rush win rate was at a 76.
I love that.
76%.
Such a good fit.
76%, 23 out of 111. So when you think about that, and you think about the job that they've done, that he's done, and what he could potentially do, I think he makes a lot of sense. I think he's going to be a guy that you can get from those bargain deals. And you know what's crazy? Me and Logan and Daniel, we're currently working on something with TWSN. Mm-hmm. The Bengals currently have a certain type. We all have types. We say, we like people that look like this, people that look like that. The Bengals have a type when it comes to defensive end. They like these big guys that are 6'5", 6'6", 280, and they're just like power rushers. Guys, they don't really do good with those type of guys. Mm-hmm. Trey Hendrickson broke the mold. He's like 6'3" and 3/4, whatever the case may be. So he's listed as 6'4", but he's a guy that has a great pass rushing repertoire, and everybody said, "Oh well, he's just having success based on who he's playing with, Cam Jordan, the whole 9 yards." Yeah. I look at a guy like Baron Browning. He makes a lot of sense for a lot of reasons. You know what's crazy? Baron Browning lines up in the same position as Trey Hendrickson. Mm-hmm. That's sort of what I talked about in my video. And so you would say, Malik, well, I don't know if it'll work that way. It's crazy. We did a deep dive in Baron Browning. he grades better actually on the left side than he does the right side. And his snaps, some of his best games graded wise via PFF were on the left side of the ball. Some of his best pressures. I'm talking about this guy was being graded at an 80 plus. You know what I mean? I look at a guy like Baron Browning and I say he's going to be looking to sign a 1 to 2 year deal to reestablish himself in the National Football League. You don't just fall off a cliff, right? You don't go from being a very good defender to just being absolutely poor. I think the torn meniscus played a role to the slow start of the season. And I do believe that Baron Browning makes a lot of sense for a lot of reasons, which I'll talk about in the video, which you guys can catch tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. But I want to get you guys ideal free agency fits. I know I kind of went a little long-winded, but I think it makes sense. I think it makes sense for a lot of reasons, especially when you consider even with him having a quote unquote down year this year, his pass rush win rate percentage is better than everybody on the Bengals except for Trey Hendrickson.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, yeah, sorry, Daniel.
No, you're good. Yeah. I think that just to go a little more broad, I think that the pass rush, and we're talking free agency, the pass rush is something that needs help. So you've got two avenues, right? You've got the NFL draft and you got free agency. When I look at the guys in free agency who I'm looking at the pass rush position, at the edge rusher, I'm looking for a guy who's, I don't necessarily want, some of these other guys out here, like the Colts have the guy Dio Agwin, like 6'6", 280. That's not necessarily what I'm looking for. Baron Browning was 6'3", 250, 240. He is maybe not going to be a 3-down guy, but I know damn well he's going to get on the field. And if he's on the field, he is going to rush the passer and he can win. That's what I'm looking for. And obviously, when you look at some of these names, there's not a whole bunch that are like, you can be fully confident in them, but that's how I'd be looking. There's one guy that, I'm looking for a guy that, hey, you can sign for a 1 to 2 year deal. And whether it's a prove it or whether it's, hey, we can push this as a need down the road, or this guy could be our potential fit long term. There's two guys I'm looking at. Number one, Dante Fowler Jr. He's older. So this is the
they
biggest
had interest
concern
in him too before.
So that's the concern. He is 30, he's turning 31. So it's like, okay, you're not going to sign him to a 4-year deal. But he has kind of seen a resurgence in his career with the Washington Commanders, and they made the playoffs. And the first game against the Buccaneers, he looked good. He's not getting a whole bunch of snaps, but he had 13 snaps. He got 3 pressures, and he's a guy where I can put him in a situational downs. He comes in and immediately, no shot to Miles Murphy or, these other guys. He has proven, especially this year, he can win as a pass rusher. He's got the size to do, I believe, 6'4", 6'3", 260 pounds. So the Bengals still want a guy who's beefier. He can still be there, set the edge a little bit, but he's one of the guys, if you're not looking for, a Josh Sweat, who you're going to have to pay serious money to go get him, Dante Fowler, I feel like could be in that 5 to 10 million price range to where, hey, sign him for a year deal and see what he gets. And for him, hey, if the Commanders don't necessarily want to re-sign him, I'm pretty confident you'd be saying, hey, the Bengals versus these other teams, we're giving you a spot, Dante, to be our best pass rusher. And I feel like that would be a pretty hard opportunity to turn away if you're Dante. So I think it makes sense from his end if he doesn't re-sign with the Commanders. So that's what I would be. He's one of the guys that I definitely circled. And I do think that pass rush, if you don't address it in free agency, it basically tells you you've got to draft one round 1/round 2, because you can't head into the season with this current crop of pass rushers. Resign Joseph Osai and say all is well, because all is not well at the pass rush.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Osai there at the end too. I wanted to bring him up just a little bit. He got a flash a lot more down the end of the year, kind of just started playing a little more consistent. I think he's certainly deserving of, potentially coming back. But just a couple quick other names that kind of fit the mold of what we're going through a little bit. Patrick Jones, Minnesota Vikings. Again, like most of you probably don't like Patrick Jones. First off, that's such a basic name, but he's plays for the Minnesota Vikings. 7 sacks this year, defensive end. He's still just 26 years old, 6'4", 265. Kind of fits a little. He's not as big as the Bengals have historically liked, but he's got the production. Yes, Brian Flores is there. He can scheme it up a little bit better, get a little more creative. But still, 7 sacks again. That would have been second on the Bengals. Like that's the production they need from a guy that again should be relatively cheaper, having a career year. 7 sacks, 26 years old, first free agency of his career. That is a good, cheap guy to target. Kind of continuing that trend of a guy drafted, played pretty well, gonna hit free agency, kind of fell out of order. Tyrone Shrewenko for the Bucks. That's another one. He's having a little bit of a down year this year, but before this year, 4 sacks his rookie year, 4 sacks his next year, 5 sacks, only 2 sacks this year. But again, the Bucks have kind of started working in some more guys. Yaya Diaby, Daniel's favorite NFL player.
He's absurd. He's absurd. I'm sorry.
No.
He's absurd.
Yeah. And Tyrone Shrewenko, 6'5", 260 again. You know, he's had that decent production. He hasn't taken that massive step. But again, me and Daniel were talking about it before the show. There's not too many positions that I think like the Bengals wholeheartedly need a true every single down player. They need certain things, but there's not too many. Just we 100% need to sign somebody that's going to play every single down no matter what. Defense in the interior, you might have more of an argument there. If you want to cut Geno Stone, then obviously it turns to safety. But going into the interior, a guy I brought up earlier for the Raiders, Adam Butler. I talked about him a little bit last week. He's a little bit older. He's 30, going to be 31 by the time this season rolls around this time next year. He's one of 4 interior defensive linemen to be top 15 in pass rush win rate, run stop win rate, and to record 4 more sacks. That's just a solid guy you can plug in. He can help you here. He can help you a little bit there. Just give you that consistency. And obviously, I found him when I was researching my whole Patrick Graham spiel. He's a guy that just, it fits. When you have free agents that obviously whoever your DC is, like Malik said, they're going to want to bring in people with them. And I would guarantee wherever Patrick Graham ends up going, Adam Butler is probably going to follow him. Trayvon Moorick might follow him. Another little edge rusher, Josh Uche. I know he hasn't really worked out in Kansas City. He's had an awkward last couple years, but 11.5 sacks just a couple years ago. Yeah. Like for the Bengals, they have to be looking at guys like that they think they can get back to form or kind of hit in that, breakout kind of age or whatever it is that they like. They just need somebody to get to the quarterback. I don't care who it is. Yeah. I don't care how old you are. I don't care how tall you are, how slow, fast, strong you are. If you can get to the quarterback, you can play for the Cincinnati Bengals. And completely shifting off of the defensive line, another guy I kind of just wanted to throw out here real quick is a linebacker. And it's not a big name. It's not even a guy like he could still come in here and be a backup. His name's Grant Stewart for the Indianapolis Colts. First off, phenomenal special teamer, which is enough to sign anybody ever. If you can contribute on special teams, you can make a lot of NFL rosters, and that's what he's done a lot of times throughout his career. And the Colts, they've had good linebackers always, so he's been developing. He got an opportunity to start one game this year. One game. That's it. That was the only game he started in the last 2 years. And his one start this year, 19 tackles. That's just a guy that is trying to take advantage of an opportunity. And 19 tackles is utterly ridiculous. Yeah. And there's the athleticism there. He ran well at the combine. Great special teamer. Just got great instincts. You don't just walk onto the field and your first start in a year and a half and get 19 tackles by accident. Yeah. Like it's just a high effort player that fills a depth need. And, I don't know how the Bengals are even going to approach their linebacker position at all whatsoever. But if they want to try to mix it up or just bring in a different depth body, I think Grant Stewart would be phenomenal.
Yeah. I mean, just looking at some more names, I think that all around the positions that we're looking at too, like if you want to look at offense side of the ball, it really has to be interior offensive line. I think to be honest, I think the tight ends position should be set, right? Mike Gesicki, you should re-sign him. What?
Who?
He is a free agent.
Mikey G.
Might bring back who?
Mikey G.
No, what was that? Say the whole name.
Mike Gesicki.
There we go.
Ain't no middle name. Like that's the goal because in the world that they don't re-sign Mike, you got to draft one. Like, and that's the part that would make honestly zero sense for me if you don't re-sign
Michael William
Gesicki. Then what are you doing? Because
MWG.
I think it makes too much sense there. What's the name? Mike MWG. That's re-sign MWG. But besides I think
William Gesicki.
I think it's got to be cornerback. That's the only other position I'm kind of looking at. What are you?
No, I'm listening.
What is that,
bro? I don't care about no corner. Listen, I care about corner.
Okay.
But I'll be honest with you. They need to fix them trenches, man.
I agree.
They need to leave no stone unturned when it comes to those trenches. They need to the same priority they made the offensive line, the offensive tackle position. They need to do the exact same thing when it comes to You know,
Yeah.
They have so much invested in the corner room already. And
Yeah.
I know it hasn't necessarily like turned out, but Dax Hill, DJ Turner, Cam Taylor Britt, Josh Newton, DJ Ivy are all guys they've drafted in the last 3 years.
Yeah.
You know, and like we talk about needing a veteran corner all the time, and we do. It would have been nice this year. But it's just it's like if you sign somebody, are you gonna hand them a spot?
Yeah.
You know, that's where it gets a little awkward for them because all these guys, for the most part, have shown they can play well. Dax Hill was great. DJ Turner was great before they got hurt. Cam Taylor Britt was not great this year. End of the year, pretty strong, but was great the year before.
Mm.
You know, we still have Mike Hilton. I guess if you want, if you don't bring back Mike Hilton, then maybe you kind of can argue you need to bring in a corner. But if you're going to bring in a corner, it have to be a super good veteran corner, like not even super good, but just super like the true veteran, like a Stephon Gilmore, where even if he doesn't play, like he knows his role. He like them younger guys being around a true veteran presence could be great for them, regardless if that veteran is playing or not.
For sure. Yeah. And that's just where I look at it too, is like there's a bunch of these names out here, like these younger names, right? Like Christian Fulton's, like Asante Samuel Jr.'s, but it really is like, what do you need? Because it depends on how Dax Hill returns. He's kind of the biggest X factor for me because I think he could solve a lot of the Bengals problems at the cornerback position. But when it comes to the rest of free agency, like I said, I think focus on edge rusher. And if you want to take a big swing, I mean, you spent $10 million on Sheldon Rankins this year. So if you release Sheldon Rankins, you're going to have money to go around. And the only real top tier guys, when I look at a position, I don't think there's a top tier guy at edge rusher. I mean, Josh Sweat kind of, but it's really, you can look at the interior offensive line and interior defensive line. I think some of the names on the interior defensive line, like the guy from the Cowboys, Osa Odigizua, like he was a monster for the Cowboys. And if you're looking at what can make a huge difference on the Bengals, getting interior pressure. And right now you're banking on Chris Jenkins and you're banking on McKinley Jackson. They could be good, but if we're talking about winning a Super Bowl and we want to swing big, I think defensive tackle should be the position that you at least try. But when I look at defense tackle, I think there's a huge drop off. You got those couple guys at the top, or you go sign a guy for a couple million like Adam Butler. So
yeah, I mean, everybody wanted Javon Kinlaw last year. If they want to take a swing at that again, you can.
He's not gonna make a lot. So he's a guy. He had a terrible year with the Jets. Everybody's down. So I think you could get him for a couple million for sure.
But then it's like
whoever you add on the defense from a defensive tackle standpoint, you have to go with the thought process that they're not taking away snaps from or the maturation from a guy like Chris Jenkins or McKinley Jackson. They're just going to be that veteran presence to stabilize the room. Matter of fact, sign too. Do what you did with Mike Daniels, right? Mike Daniels, and you add a veteran guy that can go out there and really keep the ship afloat. Maybe Daniels guy, Calais Campbell. Who knows? You know, you do something that is going to add a veteran presence to the team, but not just be a spokesperson, but a guy that could also provide you with positive production. You know, that's ideally what you're looking for. In terms of, I saw a question here from our good friend Sean Brennan, big time Chiefs fan. He says, "What positions would you target in free agency?" He said, "What positions would you target in free agency, and what would you target in the draft?" I think it all goes hand in hand, depending on what I target in free agency. You know, I think that'll determine some stuff when it comes to draft, but I still believe that free agency is for the now, draft is for the future. For me, 2 guards, non-negotiable on the table. You cut contracts of Sheldon Rankins, Sam Hubbard, Alex Kappa, Zach Moss. There's a couple other.
Those are the guarantees.
The guarantees you definitely want to cut down on. And then essentially, I want to add 2 guards. Want to add a defensive tackle for sure, an edge rusher, a guy that is a rotational piece, right? If you can bring back Joseph Osai, sure. Again, all these deals aren't breaking the bank. These deals are going to be pieces that you can add to are going to be low cost maneuvers and pieces that you can add to the rotation of the defensive line. You ideally want guys that are different. And the reason why I was so sharp on the Baron Browning potential signing is because he is of the same mold as Trey Hendrickson. And one thing I forgot to say as I was making my statement, the Bengals have had more production from guys that are of smaller stature from the defensive end position than they actually have from their mold that they're into. So you might be into 6'5", 280 pounds, whatever the case may be. but they may not be into you. And they may not be giving you the production you need. They may not be giving you the love, tender, and care that you need. So you might need to shift your focus or knock yourself down a couple pegs, couple height. You know what I mean? Maybe go to 6'3", 6'4", those guys where you get that quick production from. And that's not a bad thing as well. I'm not going to be upset if I can get two very good pass rushers on the same football team, especially if they're rotational pieces, right? Because again, you could find a guy in the draft that you could build with long term, but I'm not going to let that stop me from picking up a guy that on pass rush downs, they can generate a lot of pass rush. And the cool thing about Joseph Ossai has shown the ability to rush the passer from the interior. Miles Murphy has shown the ability to rush the passer from the interior. To be honest with you, when I turn on the tape of Miles Murphy, he's kind of slow out of his break. He seems like he thinks a lot out there. It might be beneficial to let him play that Sam Hubbard role, kick him inside every now and again, and let the game slow down for him. Remember, people were thinking, people thought Rashawn Gary was going to be a bust. I think that Miles Murphy is similar to Rashawn Gary. I thought Rashawn Gary was a little bit more polished than him personally coming out, but I feel like Miles Murphy can have a similar trajectory. I think that once he puts it all together, he could be a very good football player. Do I think Miles Murphy will ever be an elite football player? That remains to be seen. But right now, you're not even asking for elite. You're asking to get some type of positive production out of here that shows that first round pick that you invested is not going to go to waste. That's ideally what you're looking for. The same thing with Joseph Ossai. You're hoping to see that pass rusher that you hoped to when you drafted out of university, that you're going to get something out of it. And, it's funny. Me and Daniel were sitting down this past week and we got kind of inside look into Joseph Ossai's off-season regimen and how he changed his diet and a lot of other stuff that probably went into him having a successful, productive to his standard season. So I think the Bengals should leave no stone unturned when it comes to the defensive line and getting pressure on the quarterback and really shoring up the defensive line. I think they should attack this room very similar to how they did the running back position. You essentially want to remake this room to a degree. You do. You want it to look a little different. Hell, I would even say, depending on what happens with Jermaine Burton, because right now, in my eyes, I don't view Jermaine Burton as a long-term fit for the team right now until he shows some maturity or something. I can't go there right now. So I have to operate as if he's not producing for this football team. For Eric All, unfortunate as his injury is, as great as he was playing this season, I can't go into this season with the mentality that he is on the football team because this is now the second injury to that same exact knee.
Older rookie already.
Yeah, an older rookie already. So for me, you have to go with the mentality. If you have the opportunity to get better at these positions, you have to try and get better. You have the opportunity to add positive production to these positions. That's what you have to do. And Sean, my man, appreciate you, brother. He says, do you trust the Bengals will make the necessary cuts? I think they have no choice. I think if they want to keep a T. Higgins, if they want to do a lot of the things that they're hoping to do, they have to make these cuts. It's time to start operating as a functioning organization. I think the Bengals understand the outcry to keep Joe Burrow upright too. And I do expect them to get better at the guard spot. How good of a guard spot will they get? How better will they get at the guard spot? That remains to be seen. That's completely up to them. But I think that video that I did earlier today, if you guys haven't had a chance to check it out on the YouTube channel, I talked about them potentially adding Dalton Risner. People are like, well, they had the last 2 seasons to get him. When you look at the numbers and the stats that Dalton Risner put up this season, it's undeniable. He's a guy that you're probably going to be able to get right around their price range and what they're looking for. And it fits what Dalton Risner's looking for because Dalton Risner's 29 years old. He's not getting a huge, massive contract. He's probably looking for stability. He's probably looking somewhere he could be long-term. He can buy a house, right? So I think if you invest a 3-year, 4-year deal into Dalton Risner, and you look at the production that he's put up this season, 0 sacks allowed, 0 penalties, 16 pressures, only 1 quarterback hit. Joe Burrow was the most hit quarterback in the National Football League this year. You should do everything in your power to fix that, right? You should do everything in your power to fix that. And Dalton Risner is literally a key upgrade. You don't have to go buku. You don't have to go crazy. You don't have to spend top dollar that you might have to spend to get a Trey Smith or a Zach Martin if he decides to keep playing. Dalton Risner makes a lot of sense for a lot of reasons. You guys were eyeing him in the draft. He's the reason why Drew Sample was a Bengal, to be honest with you. He's the reason why Drew Sample was picked by the Bengals in the second round because they wanted Dalton Risner. They got picked a pick right before the Bengals picked, and they traded back with the Broncos. They panicked and they picked a fullback. They picked a blocking tight end, Andrew Sample, in the second round. That's what happened. So you have a chance to do it right. You have a chance to do what you could have done the last 2 seasons, but you guys make these silent agreements with players, and you say, I'm not going to bring in competition for you. You're our guy. Well, guess what? Now you have a chance right now to correct that, keep your quarterback upright, and be serious about contending for a championship, because Dalton Risner was a huge reason as to why the Vikings had as much success as they had. He's a huge reason as to why Sam Darnold was able to stay upright. If I was the Minnesota Vikings, I would do everything in my power to re-sign a Dalton Risner, especially for our young quarterback in J.J. McCarthy. So for me, I think the Bengals should 100% be looking into Dalton Risner. There's a couple of other guys like Will Freese. There's a couple of other guys that I think the Bengals could look at that make sense. But I think even our old friend Brandon Sheriff, I think there's a couple. I think there's a lot of guys that they could look at, and I'm doing this breakdown with free agency profiles because it's guys that I think the Bengals realistically should target. We can go out there and we can say, oh, well, the Bengals need to sign Trey Smith. They're not going to do that. They're not going to allocate $20 million, $18 million to a guard. Maybe they'll slap me in my face and they'll do it like the Orlando Brown deal came together out of the blue. But the Bengals traditionally have always played tackles. They've always paid cornerbacks. They have not always paid the guard position. They do not. They don't look at it. So I think if the Bengals, I think it's very, very clear to me, at least from talking to people, they want veterans up front.
Yeah.
I think these rookie projects, and honestly, a lot of it's going to come down to whoever the new offensive line coach is too. Yeah. Right. Hope it's not Press Taylor, but a lot of it's going to come down to whoever the new offensive line coach is and who they want in there as offensive lineman. But Logan, what were you saying?
Yeah, I was just gonna kind of say, like, this whole offseason and the free agency mainly, the goal is and should always almost be for free agency just to raise the floor of your team. I don't think, like, obviously we want the Bengals to go out there and sign big name guys, Trey Smiths, Milton Williams, all these guys, but the odds of that happening, I don't want to say are none, but they're slim, and I think we all truly know that. And that sounds like such a harsh thing, and like I hate it too. I wish we could be one of those teams that goes out there and plays and goes and gets those kind of guys. But truth be told, the Bengals have such a, I don't want to say easy path to upgrading their team, but it's pretty easy. You know what you need. The guards that you're playing on offense can be replaced by essentially anybody. Like, you can't play worse than what they did. Obviously, you don't want to just replace them with people a little bit better, but they cannot play worse. The two guards, or hopefully the two guards that play next year, there is little to no way that they perform worse than the two guards that were out there this year. That would just be, it's almost impossible. Like, that's how bad the guard play was this year, that you can draft 4th rounders. You can sign people for free agency for $1-2 million that will give you better production than the two guys that you're running out there. And the same can almost be said for the defensive line and the pressure and everything there too. Almost anybody you put out there is going to win more. It's going to make more tackles. The Bengals were just so bad in the areas that they were bad last year that it hurt them horribly. But again, I don't want to say truly anybody, but for lack of a better term, finding a guy that is an average as an average guard, is a slightly below average guard would be a massive upgrade. A slightly below average pass rusher would be a massive upgrade. Yes, you don't want to shoot for average and slightly below average, but the truth is those are notable upgrades for the Bengals. That is not what we want to settle for at all whatsoever. But again, the truth is slightly below average guards and pass rushers would be huge upgrades for the Bengals, and adding average players in free agency opens up the draft so much. You can go BPA, you can go positions you might not have been able to do before. Just, it's so easy for the Bengals to upgrade their areas this year because it really can't get worse than what they ran out there last year.
So one thing I wanted to just touch on, Danny, I look like you're about to say something. I just want to say this real quickly. Mike Zimmer apparently said that he was interested in returning to Cincinnati. He said at the very least he'd be interested in helping with the defensive coordinator search.
That'd be awesome.
That'd be awesome.
Anyway.
First and foremost, he said, I enjoy coaching a lot, and my home is in Northern Kentucky. When I was with the Bengals, I bought this property. I'm actually about 25 minutes from the stadium. This is my home. This is my off-season place. I'm just seeing what comes about. He said that he actually texted Zac Taylor as well and said he's willing to help in any capacity. So they definitely have each other's name. He said they were really good to my son, and I would help them in any way I could. that all being said, what if they brought Mike Zimmer back in Mark Duffner's role, senior defensive?
That would really be awesome because then I don't want to say it opens up your candidates, but it really does. Like you can maybe take a little bit more of a risk, per se, because Mike Zimmer's right there to help to kind of mold them to, bring in somebody like we talked about. Like Zac Taylor wants a guy. He wants this guy that can be here and be next to him. And that guy, the odds of that guy succeeding is so much higher when he's a guy like Mike Zimmer kind of roaming in the background, just not really telling him what to do, but just kind of like nudging him in the direction and, and just not letting him feel overwhelmed. It would just help no matter who it is. Like I said, I think it truly does open up the search a little bit because now maybe you can take a little bit of a riskier move on your Pleasants, and those kind of guys because you have a leader ahead of him to just help him. And God forbid, worst case scenario, you have a defensive coordinator that just utterly sucks and Mike Zimmer has to step in, you're fine. That's an absolute worst case scenario right there. But it would be awesome to have Mike in the building in that role.
It's cool that he just reached out to want to be a part too.
But he's a good guy. We need more good guys.
And just like so much of this also is what are these guys' other opportunities? And right now, Zimmer, it looks like, he's going to be gone from Dallas. He's not under contract with them to bring in a new head coach.
Yeah.
He's going to want a job probably. The same thing before he went to Dallas. This was his only year, I think, with Dallas. And before that, he was on a 3-year layoff doing nothing. So Mike Zimmer, I feel like it would be, in his best interest as well as for the Bengals to just bring him on staff somewhere. And then also, I hate to say it, but it makes the ability to go out and get some of these free agents who were connected with them in the past, whether it's in Minnesota or this past year with Dallas, it makes it also a lot more likely. So if you see some of these other names, the free agents from Cowboys, if Zimmer's on staff, it makes it a lot more likely that they'd be interested in those guys as well. So I think Zimmer would be almost ideal, especially if it's not in a defense coordinator role.
Yeah. I mean, I also think he could get consideration there too as well.
For sure.
Let's talk about the elephant in the room, which the show topic is actually on. Is Zac Taylor on the hot seat in 2025? I'll say this, yes.
Yeah.
100%.
No doubt about it.
100%. And had some good conversations this past week, and some buddies around the league I was talking to, and apparently, if you notice, the organization never came out with a statement of any sort. This is a prove-it year for Zac. He needs to take this team to the playoffs. Hell, he might need to go on a deep playoff run to feel comfortable in his job security.
Probably win a game.
Yeah. We talked about it a couple weeks ago. You only get one chance to, you only get one chance to do it again, to remake your roster, and from a staff standpoint. Yeah. So this is a important year for Zac. I got a chance to have some conversations, and I was told that apparently that was made clear by the front office. Zac Taylor was a great spokesman, apparently, from hey, you know what? We're in lockstep, blah, 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 blah. And those things he obviously has to say. But make no mistake about it, this is a make or break year for Zac Taylor and company. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens because I think the franchise has an idea that they need to try to win now in this Burrow era where things are looking like they're on the up and up from an offensive standpoint. By the way, if you guys could do us a favor, we have over 140 people watching live, only 30 likes. If you guys could do us a favor, give this video a like and subscribe to the channel while you are here. We greatly appreciate it. Logan, what are your thoughts?
Man, it's undeniable that he has to be. Like there's no way you have the season that we just had. I don't care how good the offense is, you miss the playoffs. Like missing the playoffs again. I know Joe Burrow was hurt the year before, and that gives you this year that he just had. And that's like, okay, dude, Joe's no longer hurt. Go out there and do your job. Well, here we are. We're still not talking about the Bengals playing in the playoffs or preparing for whatever it is. We're talking about Zac Taylor because the job was not done. And granted, it is not solely on Zac Taylor. We have discussed this. Everybody has discussed this at a nauseating pace. He is part of the problem. It's not the problem. Same thing with essentially every coach in the whole organization. But at the end of the day, if you ever go a 3-year stretch with, it should be 2-year stretch if we're being completely honest, but 3-year stretch and you don't make the playoffs or you don't even win a playoff game with this current team that played in a Super Bowl, played in an AFC Championship game, and then you're just getting worse and worse and worse and worse. Why would anybody want you to be here? Like we're running out of logical explanations to keep the guy. And there's not many already, but it's getting slimmer and slimmer and slimmer. And obviously not everybody operates with common sense and logic all the time, but he's running out of arguments to be used to save his job. And there's plenty of arguments for him to be gone already. They're getting smaller and smaller of why he should continue to keep his job. And if he's not winning a playoff game this year, there's not much of a reason to keep him. It's just like, it's almost as simple as that. Like he's been great in a number of things. The offense this year has been great. But again, Dan Pitcher comes along. Offense looks different. You just have fucking Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins. Like that is not anything Zac Taylor did. I still think he'd be average in that role wherever he went post this, but you're running out of excuses to keep the guy.
Yeah. It's, to put it simply, for me, as being on the hot seat is somebody that has the past 4 years, and you can look at the recent history and say that's not enough. There's certain guys where you don't even have to question. Sean McVay, in my opinion, John Harbaugh. There's, I'm sure, some other guys, even a guy like Matt LaFleur, maybe now, but beforehand, hey, those guys, regardless of how this season looks, he's a part of your future. Zac Taylor, for me, at the point, I'm not there. I've seen the past and I've seen the Super Bowl run, sure, but have I seen enough to say he is the Bengals' next head coach for the next 5 years? I don't think he's proved enough for me.
I think people saw the front office make this change and they said, yeah, see, the front office believes in Zac and they get behind Zac. It's actually quite the contrary. It's you're the head coach. Obviously, you're the guy that we believed in, but you cannot. Apparently, it was made clear to me. Zac Taylor cannot miss the playoffs. The expectation is for him not to miss the playoffs with the healthy Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase. Again, that just cannot happen. And I'm right there with you. So it's good to know that they're kind of putting their foot down regarding this. I was asked a question by Jacqueline Hyde, and I appreciate you always being in the chat. It says, Malik, not sure if you heard more, but was it a case of Zac scapegoating Lou and company to cool down his own seat? Or was that a decision driven by the front office to give defensive performance? I'll say this. I've had a couple of conversations with some of the coaches that were let go. Without divulging too much, I'll say, trying to figure out how I could say this without saying it. It shocked some people that decision was made, because a lot of people in the front office was fond of Lou. And I think the love you're seeing around the league from people being interested in him is because people believe that he is a better coordinator than what he was given in Cincinnati. And from what I was told, what really kind of kept the glue together in the locker room when the Bengals were able to rally from 4-8 was actually Lou Anarumo taking more of a vocalized role in the locker room. That's what I was told. So, again, it'll be interesting to see what happens. It'll be interesting to see who they hire. Again, I'm not trying to sway people one way or the other. You believe what you want to believe, but that's just the information I was given. We'll see what happens with Zac as the head coach. We'll see who they hire. We'll see who they get in here to really get this thing corrected. Daniel, let's get to a few questions before we head out of here.
Yeah, for sure. So we've got some questions here. And once again, we appreciate everybody tuning in, and make sure you guys like this video and subscribe for our full content. So we had a question early on. Somebody was asking if you guys could sign one free agent, and obviously we kind of talked about it, but one free agent, and that be the number one signing, who would it be?
I think if we're just talking, not necessarily regardless of price, but like,
yeah, regardless of price, they were asking.
I guess regardless of price, I'd probably say Trey Smith, but Milton Williams is right there for me too. Just the pass rush upside from the interior, just a hell of a player. And I think I don't want to say it's easier to get a better guard than it is. It's definitely easier to get a better guard than it is a defensive tackle. So I think, that's why I lean Milton. Actually, the more I think about it, he fits what the Bengals need. He's just a hell of a player. Hell of a player.
And if you guys have any questions, once again, drop them down below. My guy, I would probably say Javon Holland, to be honest. I think that's obviously interior offense line. Trey Smith sounds amazing. I think that there's a real conversation that you have to look at. Geno Stone, like the real conversation there, like you got to have one this year. Who's your free safety? Free safety is an important ass position. And I'm not going to the draft for it. I'm not waiting to the draft. So it's either you go for one of these top tier guys, maybe even settle a little lower like a Julian Blackmon, or you run it back with Geno Stone and Jordan Battle. But regardless of price, I think I would definitely say Javon Holland and obviously T. Higgins as well.
Yeah, sorry.
What is that?
Javon Holland's my guy, bro.
Oh.
I'm right there with you. I'm agreeing with you. I'm happy.
Javon.
We don't usually agree on a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
I'm happy we agreeing on that.
For sure. I was like, wait, why the hell are you doing?
Nah, bro.
Man,
Because I actually think you can get Javon Holland at a reasonable deal too. Respectfully. Reasonable within reason. Not a Jesse Bates type deal.
yeah, for a good young safety.
I would definitely. And regardless, like you're going to have money to spend this offseason.
Yeah.
And
But if Geno Stone was cut tomorrow or anytime before free agency, Javon Holland we would not stop talking about how we need to sign it. So, that's
completely.
fair.
We had Jacqueline Hyde said, anyone know if there's been some discussion with the front office about changes, drafting, scouting, analytics? Does anybody know? I'd probably say you'd have to be having these
hope so.
conversations, right? Like, especially with the changes that they made with the coaching staff, right? Lou Anarumo, Frank Pollock, these conversations they've got to be being had, right? Maybe they don't go in and add an extra scout because at this point, the scouting's already done for these guys, right?
Better be.
The scouting for going to these schools, like, so at that point, right, when you're discussing adding another scout, you'd be talking about for this upcoming, cycle.
Yeah.
I love Javon Holland, but
Yeah.
I don't rate him the greatest when his agent is Dave Mulgeta.
Oh, that's true.
And I was told confidentially, Dave Mulgeta does not like negotiating with the Bengals. So
surprise.
surprise or surprise. No, but like it was actually, it was always speculated, but it was actually said this time. He cannot stand negotiating with the Bengals. That could be because the Bengals draw their line in the sand. That could be because he draws his line in the sand. But, definitely his business is making sure his players get paid, which in turn gets him paid. But I think that's also bad business because at that point, you're not acting in the best interest of your client and you're not listening to what they need. And I think that's sort of what kind of played the role in T. Higgins dropping him as an agent. Just a thought. But you can't have egos and you can't have preconceived, feelings about a team going into negotiation because then you're negotiating in bad faith. One thing I hope that any player the Bengals draft is not being represented by athletes first and Dave Mulgeta. Because once that was told to me, I was like, oh, okay. So the bag is really out. And for him to feel as bold as to say that to people, again, people talk, players talk. And, I definitely talk to a lot of players and people around the league. And for him to, first of all, that's reckless on his behalf to say that. But I also think that that's just kind of like just an asinine way to look at it, respectfully. I met the guy. He was a nice guy when I met him, gave me his number and everything like that. But, I just think that that's kind of, that you're negotiating in bad faith for your clients because not every single one of your clients are going to be gems of a prospect, even though that's how they like to really go after guys. They literally assess the pool and they say, hey, who's going to be an absolute stud? Because cha-ching in our minds, I'm not going to represent somebody who's going to be a practice squad player or a third string or fourth string. They want people that are actually going to put money in their pocket. So will Joseph Osai find his way back in Cincinnati? Because he's also represented by Dave Mulgeta. We'll figure that out. But I don't rate that guy the highest personally because I just think that's you can't have egos when you're going into this thing.
And it's clear that it's kind of got his mind already made up. A couple more questions. Some people are asking, Ken Dipple, KP, we're asking about the NFL draft. And we've got a lot of draft content coming you guys' way. Real quick, first round, would it be smart to draft the swing tackle or edge? And the names that they brought up were Mike Green, James Pierce. Real quick. I know that we've got a lot of draft ideas, but real quick, what would you say?
I mean, I think you can argue any of those players you named, the positions you named. I know that, if we drafted an offensive lineman, a lot of people would freak out. And you'll probably hear me talk about it a lot, but this offensive line class is pretty good in that range. There's some good guys and makes more sense than you guys are ready to admit, and we'll get into that as it gets closer. But obviously, the Mike Greens, the James Pierce Jr.'s, the pure pass rushers, we just named every free agent that we like because they're a pure pass rusher. If they add a pure pass rusher, no matter who it is, it's going to make sense.
For sure. And I also think when you look at it, to be honest, there's so many different options they can go in. It's going to be, we got to wait and see, but there's a lot of talented guys at that position. I'm going to be honest. Also, round 2, there's a lot of good guys. Defensive line, interior defensive line, interior offensive line, edge rusher. There's a lot of guys. One last question from Sean Kretka. Would you guys shop Cam Taylor Britt this offseason as in trade?
Just not something they really do. And I just don't really think I would. It's really, I don't want to say dumb, but it doesn't make a lot of sense to sell at people's low points unless it's, necessarily just legal issues or whatever, and you're just trying to cut bait completely. If anybody would give you anything, you take it. But Cam's shown he can be good.
Yeah.
Cam was really bad this year for a while, but to his defense, he ended the year pretty strong, like a lot of people on the defense did. But I would not be willing to give up on a guy like that yet when he showed how good he can truly be. Maybe that's a decision once if you shop him and people are willing to give you good prices for him, or maybe you see if Cam Taylor Britt continues to do the off-field things that he does and you're tired of it, then maybe it becomes one of those situations. I'm not quite there just yet.
Yeah. And same thing when you look at a guy, I think you brought it up best. Are you going to sell a guy at the low point? And when we talk about trading, if you're going to end up trading Cam Taylor Britt right now, I think you're getting we're talking 5th round pick, maybe a 4th round, but you're not going to get a team right now to trade you for a 3rd round pick. So
and then you need a corner that much worse than if you trade him.
And it's like in the off season right now, whoever you're going to pick in the 4th round pick is not going to be better than Cam Taylor Britt right now with how the Bengals have shown that they've drafted. And if he is, then you've got your own 4th round pick right now to do it. So, that's one last,
well, I wanted to Dada D, my guy. He says, been waiting to catch you live, brother. Gotta apologize. You was damn right. And I like how you put my last name. Appreciate that. About the Deion Sanders leaving Colorado University being a real consideration. Brother, it's fine. Like one thing I realized when I first got into the industry, the league is not as complicated as we all think. Respectfully, it's really not as complicated as people think. And my favorite week is coming up, Combine Week, where people talk and chatter starts to get really, really loud. And, I've made the decision that I am probably going to be fully immersed into the insider game this offseason. Again, I was kind of thinking about stepping away from it, honestly. But honestly, I heard rumblings about Deion to the Dallas Cowboys last year, potentially. And it was always something that was really toyed around with. And I knew that the longer this Mike McCarthy thing got drawn out, the more likely it would happen. If you ask me, he would be right now my favorite to be the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. And right now the hang up is his staff and culture. And if Jerry really wants him, it's going to be like a $10 million buyout. He's probably going to buy him out. He's probably going to bring him into Dallas, probably bring in his own people. The whole idea there, and somebody actually DM'd me the other day, they're like, hey, do you think that if the Dallas Cowboys actually go after Deion and they draft Shador, because that would definitely happen, do you think that Shador would sit behind Dak Prescott for a year? I said Dak Prescott is out of there. Dak Prescott's getting traded. There's no way in the world Deion's going to have his son sit behind anyone. So it's going to be who's going to give them the best. Who's going to put Deion in the best position to feel like he's in a position to draft his sons and win. And I just think it makes a lot of sense when it comes to this. I hope that you guys really enjoy our offseason coverage, because this is our first offseason out here in Cincinnati, and we really get to do things our way in a lot of ways. And I'm looking forward to continue to bring news to you guys as it unfolds with the offseason and things such as that. It wouldn't shock me one bit if Deion is going to be the next head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. It feels like the worst kept secret behind channels. And honestly speaking, I think he's going to suck in the NFL, respectfully. Really? I think Deion's going to suck in the NFL. I mean, also coaching is really not like, it really does involve X's and O's. Yes. Like there's not like, these guys are $1 million athletes. And honestly speaking, there's some people that are making more money than Deion made his entire playing career right now. And, I just think that he's going to have a hard time with his bravado and his mentality like that of winning them over. If they're serious about bringing Deion in, they have to realize Shador Sanders is going to be their franchise quarterback.
year one, if
Who
he's
has the first overall
starting,
pick? The Titans.
Titans.
So I could see the Titans trading for Dak Prescott if they're not in love with any one of these players. And
That's smart.
And thank you so much, Gary. We really think the world of Sparks as well too. We're really, really excited about him. You know, when we look at it, I think the first overall pick being traded for a guy like Dak Prescott, I think that's a little too rich for my blood personally. I don't think Dak is worth the first overall pick in the draft. But when you're considering the quarterback class that's coming out, it makes a lot of sense for a lot of reasons. And just understand Shedeur Sanders would then be the first overall. I'm putting my bet in now probably for Shedeur Sanders to be the first overall pick because I expect Deion to get that job. I just don't think that you hire a Kellen Moore. I don't think that that's a realistic thing.
Yeah.
I think Kellen Moore is like the backup option. But if you remember the video we did a while ago, anybody that takes over the Dallas job, Jerry's going to be looking to do two things: put asses in seats and get someone to buy into the culture still. Deion does both. Deion makes Cowboys fans feel excited again because they remember how much success they had with him as a player. And I think he makes sense for that job. I think he makes sense for that role. And I think Deion will be there to make sure his son gets drafted because that's real money. You get drafted first overall pick, that's life-changing money, right? I look at it and I say, after they draft a Deion Sanders, Deion's job is done. Deion got his son drafted. He could coach the Dallas Cowboys for a year or two and then move on and let an actual coach that's interested in being an NFL coach go in there and do the job they're supposed to do. But I don't believe the notion that players can't coach, because we saw guys like Antonio Pierce, first-time head coaches, right? We saw guys like Gerard Mayo, first-time head coaches, albeit they did not have great. But I look at it and I say, hey, you know what? You know, Mike Vrabel was a former player. Like Deion actually has proved that he could coach at the college level, albeit it was with a lot of pushback. But to me, you trade Dak Prescott for the first overall pick, and you probably have to send them a second.
Or you'd probably trade Dak and your number 12 overall for number 1.
Yeah.
That'd probably.
Yeah. But you probably have to get back like a second or third.
Probably that too.
Have to get back like a second or third. You do that, you flip those, you swap that, boom. Dak is in Tennessee.
I think that's an amazing fit. And I think that if I'm the Titans too,
they're looking at Cam Ward right now.
Yeah.
And it's like, does Dak Prescott do better for you guys? Because it's no secret, Dak probably needs a change of scenery.
Yes.
Dak probably needs a change of scenery at this point in his career. And so, like, when I look at it, I just think that it all makes sense. It makes, you know, be honest with you right now, what they're discussing and negotiating back and forth is really stupid crap. It's, hey, will you give me my staff that I want? Oh, will you give me the things that I want? Yeah, sure. We'll buy you out. We'll do everything. Again, Jerry's going to get to this point where the entire coaching circus focuses on him. You don't have to do any really deep dive. And if we get the first overall pick, because you know who we're drafting already, right? It doesn't have to be this. It's not going to be like your typical process, right? It's going to be like this search really could last long for a head coach. I don't think it'll go this far, but who's to say it doesn't go past the combine or by the combine, so they can avoid all the father-son questions. I mean, you really just don't know how this thing is going to shape up. But to me, I think that I appreciate y'all. Number one, I saw people saying, they appreciate our media and the job that we do. We greatly appreciate you guys too. I'm appreciative of you guys tuning in each and every single Wednesday, making us a part of your daily coverage. Make sure you guys do us a favor, give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications so you guys never miss when we go live or when we upload content from the TWSN studios. We greatly appreciate y'all. And remember, there's only one way you should be waking up, talking sports, right? Having the conversation, tuning in to some of your favorite Bengals talk, and that is the right way. So we'll see you guys next Wednesday for another episode of State of the Jungle.
All they ever do is win, so kick that, relax, the TWSN.